No, let's call this meeting to order before we get in trouble. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the panel members first. To my left is Tracy Anderson. To my far left is Richard Whitbread. I'm Marcel Laurando. I'll be chairing. The assessor today is Merritt Froelich. And our administrative assistant today will be Katie Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Medical Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be with your Board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Swear them in, please.
Yeah, I swear.
Please state your name.
Merritt Froelich.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth and whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please. Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth and whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
First property on the docket today will be 75 Trottier.
File number is,
ready, Mayor.
yep, file number is 19-1949. Roll number is 03066024500. For 2020, we have an assessed value of $1,279,000. The property is a warehouse, one-story building. The effective year built is between 1975 and 2007. We're using effective year of 1985 for this property. Wall heights are 14 feet. We have a leasable area of 12,320 square feet. I've never inspected this property, but if you're looking at the pictures on page 2, the building does look like to be in excellent condition. It looks very new and modern, and Mr. Smith has, he also has pictures in his brief. Location for this property is shown on the bottom of page 2. And on page 3 shows the general layout of it. It shows where the assembly area is, the carpenter's area, and the office area, where the new addition took place on the right-hand side of the building. The property is owner-occupied, and the property owner has been compliant with regards to completing its income and expense mailer on page 4 and 5. There have been no sales for this property. What we've done for this property is area is 12,320 square feet. We're using a rent of $7.05. Vacancy at 2.5%, expenses at 2%, shortfall at $375. To come up with $81,836, using a cap rate of 6.4%. We have a value of $1,279,000. What we've done here is I've picked some comparables that are in the neighborhood. Their ranges are from $5.19 to $10.50. All recent leases from 2015 onward, being mindful of the reference date of April 1st, 2018. None of these leases here are very, very old. What we've done here is, when we're looking at market valuation within the city of Winnipeg, we're looking at the overview perspective as, has markets gone down? Are there any macroeconomic indicators that show us that the property values have gone down to 2018 assessment values? So what we have here is in a report that Stevenson has provided about market in the industry within the city of Winnipeg with regards to the industrial category. Just some general overview information how the economy's performed well in 2017. They are predicting a slowdown in 2018, but that hasn't really been the case of any significant. None of the major economic indicators have gone down since then. Market overview, the industrial market in Winnipeg continues to be a landlord's market with available products still at a minimum. Industrial leasing market in Winnipeg was very active in 2017 as there continues to be more users in available space. It talks about vacancy rate, and a lot of you guys have heard a lot of these stories before, but these are just some economic indicators supporting that the market conditions are growing. On page 6, there are also some additional sales and some other transactions that have taken place. For the cap rate that we've used for this property, so the property size is a storage warehouse of 12,300 square feet. We're using a cap rate of 6.4%. If we're looking at the industrial uses that we have for this property, this is a single tenant user, and it's in between our 20th and 80th percentile, between 6.34% and 7.80%. It's a smaller size, so which is why I feel comfortable with that 6.4% cap rate that we used. On page 11, we have the general information with regards to some of what we've done with regards to the expense ratio. There's a point of contention with regards to why why we've taken the 5% off. The reason why we've taken our 5% off is in those situations, what has taken place is that the management expenses are fully recoverable, and with regards to tenant inducements, free rent, leasing conditions, and overall tenant improvement allowances, all those are not to be included with regards to being a deductible expense according to municipal board orders that have taken place. To support our cap rate, what we've done is we have on the bottom of page 11, we have cap rates showing a range of 4.97% to 8%, consistent with what we have here on page 10. With regard to non-recoverable expenses in our analysis that we've conducted, once we've taken out the leasing conditions, the tenant improvements, the allowances, and the free rent, we've come across situations whereby we feel that the 2% non-recoverable expense allowance is very fair. And that concludes my formal presentation.
Sure, questions?
So the market value arrived at here, this is all model driven, there's no overrides for it or anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's good. Even included, I see the Cushman Wakefield brokerage commentary from year-end 2017. Just looking at page number 9 at the bottom there, and this is with regard to your page number 11 as well. So at the bottom of page number 9, it has sales transactions in 2017. And there it lists 90 Park Lane, and the sale price, size of the property, and the transaction type. It says right there, user, does it not?
In terms of user?
It says the purchaser is a user. Well, it doesn't say purchaser, it says transaction type user, correct?
Yes, Cushman Wakefield sales transactions in 2017.
Yeah, so the sale was to a user, as it notes there.
Isn't everyone a user? When buyers and
Okay,
sellers are...
so let's get into it then. Let's
I'm just asking a question. When I look at our...
Why don't you wait till he's finished asking the question?
All right. 90 Park Lane was the property Occupied by a tenant as of the date of sale, was it producing an income?
So usually when you do a proper analysis with regards to cap rates, you do a 3-year stabilization of the property, what had taken place before the sale had taken place. In this circumstance here for 90 Park Lane, what we had done is for a short period of time it was vacated, and we did our cap rate study based on the time it was not vacated. So when we looked at the actual cap, when we developed the cap rate, we looked at when it was fully occupied and there was an income statement for us to use.
So the capitalization rate was not developed as of the sale date of the transaction?
We were looking at when it was fully occupied, yes, because it was a short transitional period.
So if you were to buy that property as of the valuation date, you would not be receiving any income from the property, correct?
But we'd be looking at the historical performance of the building and the rents that they were receiving and their net operating income to derive a net income for this property.
That's fine. You have every right to do as you wish as far as evaluating it. What I'm asking is, was there any income from the property as of the purchase date?
I think it's evident.
Okay. 1100 Waverly Street,
Yes.
page number 11.
Yep.
That's was formerly, it's a relatively large complex with several buildings, was formerly a Manitoba Hydro property, which moved on from them. Had significant vacancy, had to be repositioned in the market. It's now an office and retail property, correct?
Office, retail, and warehouse property, yes.
So the major tenancies are, say, Lasertopia, a Towers Engineering, 2 gyms, several other office users, including water and waste.
It's like a flex warehouse that are standardized with our industrial property warehouse.
Office and retail, correct?
It has a wide variety of uses, just like
What
flex
would the
warehouses
dominant,
that are on
uses
Lorimer,
be?
that are on Keniston, that are on Doodle Road.
What would the dominant use in the property be?
It's multi-use, like other flex warehouses that we have within the city of Winnipeg.
Do you have a list of the tenancies there?
You know what, in my office time, before it was an industrial property, I dealt with this property in the past. There's like multi-dude tenants in there. I think the income expense mailer probably has over 20 of them. And it's a flex warehouse with other properties that we have in our classification for industrial.
Okay, I only want to do this once, so just bear with me. So write this down. Here we go. If I stated the main tenancies are Lasertopia, Curbs, Strive Fitness, a Chinese food restaurant, Tower Engineering, Manitoba First Nations Resource Center, City Winnipeg Water and Waste. Would you disagree?
Nope.
And the 90 Park Lane purchase, where that was purchased by a numbered company that's owned by the Felius family, which is West End Radiators for their own use.
Okay.
I know that the panel members have heard extensively with regard to the 5% non-recoverable issue. I'm not going to question on that. I do have rebuttal evidence that everybody has heard many times that I'd like to submit into evidence, but in the interest of saving us time, if everybody is aware of our position on this, that we don't need to cover that ground.
Well, we know your position on it, but I think there might have to be a little bit of ground covered only because Merrick has opened something up, so.
Well,
I'll see if I got any other questions from the panel members first. Richard?
I have no questions.
Merrick, you spoke of a board order.
Yep.
But you didn't bring the board order?
I have them written here. I have file numbers, order numbers that are listed here. Just because everyone has heard this in the past, I felt it would be redundant to make copies and everything like that. I provide, a lot of agents bring verbal evidence.
Yeah.
I'm under oath and I could quote them verbatim.
Good. What exactly was said in it?
Well,
The last line.
The board reiterates that tenant improvements, leasing commissions, and leasing expenses are not expenses which may be used to reduce the income for the purposes for calculating market value.
So I have further questions now.
Yeah, now you have a further question.
I keep asking these as questions. When you read through the entire board orders, as I have done, and review the commentary there from the municipal board, it's stated that the position of the appellant was that the net rent that was applied to the properties in those appeals, the net rent should be reduced by the amount of tenant improvements, etc., to bring it down to the net effect of the actual return to the, and I'm asking a question, the actual return to the owner. The order, as it reads, in not allowing that reduction of the net rent is not referring to deduction on the expense side, and indeed I believe there was the normal 5% and 2% deduction on the expense side if you go through the board orders. Is that correct?
Things always change and evolve. The 5% and 2% was used at the time. It's not currently being used for the 2020 assessment cycle.
Okay, those are my own
Then
questions.
how do you refer to that board order if the 5% was in there?
What's that? How do we refer?
Yeah, you're referring to that board order, correct?
Yes.
And yet the 5% was in that order, was it not?
So
In that value?
in that value, correct. But what we've stated as well is that in our analysis that we've done, we're under oath, and under the circumstances, if we didn't feel this was a fair indication of market value, and when you're looking at market value, you're looking at all the factors. We don't pick and choose what we do and what we don't have. We're legislated to receive income and expense mailers to do an analysis. We follow the standards by IAAO. We do sales analysis. We go through a variety of steps to ensure that we have a fair and equitable assessment. And so, to answer your question, this is what was stated in the past. I acknowledge that I had used the 5% and 2% in the past, but moving forward with our current data, we use what's provided to us on the income and expense mailers with regards to that. So
if you're using what's supplied to you on the expense, there are some non-recoverables that are listed on there sometimes. Are you saying you don't allow any of them other than the 2%?
we use the 2%. Here's what we'll have here, and here's a perfect example of non-recoverables that we have here, because there's a sale on a property that we're dealing with, the Johnson property. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at when I did my cap rate study, or trying to figure out what the cap rate is for that property, once we take out leasing commissions, tenant improvements, the free rent, and everything like that, we're a lot closer to our 2% than we are than some of the values that have been provided to us by the tax agents.
So do you take 5 or 6 or 7 years to put that model together, or do you just do it in 1 year?
Well, when we do our cap rate studies, we use a three-year average with regards to cap rate studies for our analysis.
So when you created your model for this 2%, did you create it using more than 1 year, or did you just use 1 year?
We look at all data that's been available to us.
I'm done with my questions. On with the presentation.
I have rebuttal whenever you
Let's
wish
have your
to
rebuttal.
bring that up. There you go. We can wrap this up pretty quickly. Wait till everybody has it. So, let's briefly run through this. So the position of the City of Winnipeg, or their evaluation model that's being applied, has been changed for the 2020 cycle to remove what was formerly termed the 5% management allowance. Formerly there was a 5% management allowance and a 2% other allowance. It was always stated that the 2% other was for structural repair, which is very normal in the market. When you look at appraisals, there's always an allowance for structural repair of the property. It is roughly 2%. You can do it either based on a price per square foot or on a percentage. And it is in that neighborhood of 2% most of the time. The 5% management was a misnomer and was actually reflective of the non-recoverable expenses that all owners incur for any property that they own. These are expenses that cannot be recovered from any normal tenant under standard leasing terms. And the City of Winnipeg's model accurately reflected this from, I can't remember when they exactly started, but let's say it was in the early 2000s, right through the 2018 assessment. This was then adjusted for 2020, and in our report we'll go through our position on that and the theory behind it and the backup for it. What we're stating here, I didn't include the city's former guidance as to how they did their valuations. I say it follows the 5% and 2% right through 2018, 2020 being adjusted. What we're showing in the rebuttal evidence here is that the city has taken themselves outside of the accepted practice within both Manitoba and within the Canadian, generally within Canadian jurisdictions, and more broadly than that, this is the standard. The standard theory has not adjusted. We're not looking at any changes in how properties are valued between now and then. Property management expenses have always been a recoverable expense under leasing terms, under normal leasing terms, from 99%, round figures, of tenants under their standard leasing terms. You get exceptions where you have government leases where they may have some exceptions in what they will pay on, and in very rare circumstances some other powerful tenants will have that accepted as well. But by and large, property management has always been recoverable. In 2020, it's not different than it was in 2018, 2012, 2008. It's always been the same. So this is not a new thing. Looked at in that light, I hate to point it out, but if you look at it in that light, then the city has been erring by 5% in their valuations for decades. Looking at the material that I've included in the rebuttal, the first couple of pages are with regard to a property that I represented in the city of Brandon in the 2020 assessment cycle. It's an investment property. You look at the workup on the third page N, and it includes all of the standard deductions, including vacancy. It has 5% for what is termed management, and then it has 2% for other. This is the province of Manitoba and their standard income valuation model. I have had the same on numerous other properties in this cycle as well as in the past. They have not adjusted their model. They see no change in the marketplace. The same holds true for both Saskatchewan and Ontario. I'm not going to delve into this material as we've all heard it. It's there for you to review. Suffice it to say, these jurisdictions also allow for the deduction of these non-recoverable expenses that a landlord would incur above and beyond what the city is allowing in their revised valuation model. Thank you.
Questions? Eric?
You know what, I don't got nothing.
Richard?
I'm inclined to go down this path, but
Go for
I
it.
think, what's that?
Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
Well, I would have more questions of the assessor than of you. Let's leave it for now. We've been through this so many times. No questions, Mr. Chair.
Tracy?
No questions.
I think I've questioned you enough on this in the past, but we're going to end up. And on with your presentation.
All right. So we're looking at 75 Trache in the Fort Garry industrial area. Built in 3 stages. 1975 was the original 7,200 square foot building. They had an addition in 1993 at the rear of the subject, 3,000 square feet. And in 2007, they built a small office area at the front of the property, which was 2,120 square feet. That gives us our total area for the property. The pictures of the building are there for you to see. There's a couple of that interior of the office area. The front, if you look at my page 4, the top photo is a picture of the front of the building. So what you're looking at is the aluminum cladding for the office area. That's a small portion of the building. The majority of it is brick masonry. As you can see, just beside that, and then at the rear, there's the again aluminum clad, standing roof clad rear addition at the back end of the site. Inside, you can see the build-out. The office area is open to the deck. It's not closed in, etc. It's pretty straightforward. Your ceiling height here is 14 feet, and we've got a 2.5 to 1 land to plan area ratio. Site is shown on page number 8. You can see the layout with the rail tracks at the rear, and the location is on page number 9. Looking at our valuation, I'm going to skip ahead a bit here in the interest of time, as we're fairly identical on the majority of this valuation. We've used a $7 a square foot rental rate for the property. We have a couple of rental comparables for you on page number 12. Our vacancy allowance for the subject is 2.5%, shortfall 375, and our cap rate is 6.5%. I can go through the reasoning for that, but if you look at the comparison of the two valuations on page number 15, the dominant difference there that we're looking at is the inclusion of the 5% non-recoverable expense in the valuation model. As I've mentioned and you've mentioned, you've heard all of this from me before, the text with regard to the non-recoverable expenses, the theory behind it, what line items should be included in those non-recoverables, and what our 3-year study with regard to non-recoverables included, how many properties, what the averages were, etc. It's all there for you to see. Suffice it to say, we're simply asking for the re-inclusion of the 5% non-recoverable in the 2020 valuation models. The 6.5% capitalization rate, we give you our cap rate study at the top of page number 15. These were all investment transactions. You can see the range of them. Subject property is somewhat smaller, would have a few more buyers for it. It's located in Fort Garry. Balancing that, it has a low ceiling height of 14 feet and no additional land to expand onto. 6.5% would be the bottom end of what we would see for that property. So this gives us our final market value of $1,185,000. And the addendum materials include the income expense, the two brokerage reports that are referred to, as well as some supportive decisions from the 2020 Board revision cycle with regard to the 5% allowance. And I'm open for questions.
Merrick?
In 2018, what was the value?
I really do not know.
You don't know? Well, you didn't put in a brief, usually do.
I didn't represent the client at that time.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so in 2018, the value was $1,079,000, and you have a value of $6,000 more. Does that seem to be a fair indication of market conditions in the southwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg?
So, two comments. To my knowledge, the 2018 value was not appealed. And second point being, I don't base my valuation in any way on what the prior assessed value of the property was. So the amount that it rose on an unappealed value is not something I would consider.
Do you consider sales to be an important aspect with regards to market valuation?
It certainly can be, as long as they've been well researched and vetted.
Okay. Is there any reason why you didn't include addresses in your cap rate study on page 15?
Is there any reason why?
Why you didn't include the addresses so we could verify your work?
They're not really a mystery. It's it's a confidentiality issue that we have some clients that don't want their
So we have no.
information.
So what you're saying is that we can't test your data or anything like that in terms of integrity or anything like that.
I'm not sure that those are words that came out of my mouth.
Okay. Well, I'm questioning is has other members of this the industrial section asked you for addresses for this property, or your answer is because of confidentiality? You're not including that.
My answer is because of confidentiality. Any request that I have had has been extremely recent.
Okay. So Mr. Penner didn't make any requests at a recent hearing?
I don't recall if Mr. Penner did or not. I've had one hearing, well, actually I've had two hearings. I guess he sat in on another one. And they sent him in for one particularly important one where we had some very interesting discussion. I don't recall if Mr. Penner asked for addresses or not.
Okay. No other questions?
He was able to do some research, as I recall.
Well, he was not able to provide, I provided him your brief, and he had no information on that, so I don't know what sort of research he had done. Thank you.
Richard? No questions?
Questions?
No questions? And I've got no questions.
Okay.
So we'll be able to move on. We get this packed into here. We're just off to the races. Next property up will be 911 Najimodja Boulevard. When you are ready, Mayor.
File number is 191550. Roll number is 060502-12000. Address is 911 Najimodja Boulevard, and the owner is Norma E. Huron. Assessed value that we have for this property is $2,204,000. The actual years built are between 1977 and 2010. And we use the effective year built for this property of 1982. What we have here for this land area is we have 287,105, and we have a leasable area of 25,070, which includes some mill space, some second floor space. The land area for this building is 12.31, And that's an important consideration that we're looking at. So if I speak out of turn, I think Mr. Smith and I are in agreement with regards to the income value for this property, but we're looking at the value of the surplus land. On page 2, what we have here is we have pictures for the property. So it's Bureau Lumber. It's on La Jamodier, just south of Dugald. I'm sure many of us have driven by this in the past. What's unique about this property here is on page 3, as you see, it has a low frontage area, and the majority of the land's towards the back. And at the bottom of page 3, what's interesting that I looked at, and I was just trying to get my mind around it, what we've done is there's a lot of, what seems to be a lot of boats at the back portion of the subject property of the land, and I'll have additional pictures of it here. So there is like surplus land that's being used for this property. Page 4 shows some pictures of the subject property that was provided. It's a mixture of it, to some retail component of it, some storage shelves. Page 6 shows the storage area. Page 6 shows the warehouse area and the second floor. At the top of page 6, you'll see that there is an office on the second floor level, and the bottom shows some additional storage area. Page 7 shows the racking system of different supplies being used. Page 8 shows something else, and page 9 shows building number 2, which is 4,000 square feet. And on page 9, we have the garage space heated at 8,820 square feet. This has a very low ceiling, which is why our rent's so low for this property. You can see on the bottom of page 9 where that the ceiling is low, and you can see that it's a 12-foot ceiling, but it's more like a garage more than anything else in the warehouse. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out income and expense mailers. And now we look at the income workup on page 11. So what we've done here is that for the breakdowns of the 4 different areas, we have rents that vary from $3.33 to $3.13, and then $5.53, and $5.64. When I go to 113, 584 divided by 25,070, we come up with a blended rent of $4.53. Using a leasable area of 25,000 square feet, vacancy at 2.5, expenses 2% shortfall at 375, we come up with a net operating income of $106,179. Using a 6.5% cap rate, we come up with a value of $1,633,000, or $634,000. What we also have here is we have the additional land value. So what we did is, because of the nature of the property, we used surplus land of 147,185 square feet. We used a rent of $3.87 to come up with a rounded value of $570,000. And what's interesting about this is that as we look at this property, and nothing's been recorded here. So what we have here is we have parking income of $54,000. So this property has parking income of $54,000. So that is for the storage space. We haven't included that in our income calculations. We've just done the rent. But if we're taking the $54,000 because it's parking, it's for the space that's listed there, even if I'm being super generous with a 10% cap rate, that's adding, $500,000 worth of value. So when I look at the 570 that we're using with the cap rate, and it's not, we're not using a 10% cap rate here on vacant land, it's significantly lower than that. But that's why I feel justified in the 570 that we're using, because they are getting a parking income of $54,852 added on with the net income of the property. That's why I feel comfortable with the $2,204,000 that we've represented here today. What I have on page 12 is some comparables. Like I stated before, I think Our rents are very reasonable for the nature of this property. And what I've also done here is on page 13, is I've just showed some comparable properties. Bear in mind, all these comparables are superior to the subject property. But if so I'm showing a range of $6.15 to $12.14. So I understand these are superior, but I'm not asking for $12 or $6.15. I'm asking for $3.87, and their own income and expense mailer supporting the $54,000 that they're getting. So if we use a cap rate on the $54,000, it's space that's being utilized. On page 14 and 15, I got some comparables here of where the properties are located on Marion. And on 14, bottom of 14 is on Marion again. Comparable 3 is on Plinkett. And comparable 4 is on Doodle Road. We've discussed our cap rates study, and that concludes my formal presentation.
Questions?
Yes, on page 10 of your brief, you have the income and expense mailer.
Yep.
So, a lot has been said about parking revenue. So, I'm looking at the income and expense mailer here. It states at the bottom. And they've put their figures in the wrong column, but they're essentially stating they're collecting a little over $19,000 on the vacant land, and $26,600 on the rear buildings. Is that correct?
We're only as good as the information that we've been provided, so
$45,000 roughly.
it still doesn't add up to the $54,000 on the mailer.
And so, looking at that, let's say, for argument's sake, and I don't believe this to be the case, let's say that the parking is in addition to that. So we have $45,000, to which we add $55,000, so we have $100,000 in gross revenue, as it's stated on the property. Your net on that would be considerably lower, I'm assuming. They state there's 20% vacancy, correct? So are we not overstating, if we don't make adjustment on the land portion, as I have done, are we not overstating the value of those buildings?
You know what? Because the data is so hard to analyze, it's hard to make an assumption. I'm just going off what's been provided here.
Okay.
All I know is, like, when I did my research on this, and I got a bit better picture here. So we have 5 sheds at $26,000. So are the sheds a part of the middle building here? I don't know. So for clarity, Trevor, is it okay if I show this picture? Because I want to get my head around this as well. Because for me, it's all about trying to figure out what makes sense. So, and then I look at it. So, and Trevor, you've been to this property. I haven't. So what are the 5 sheds here that are on this property? Because my guess is it's the long vertical one.
That's the storage shed.
That's what I'm guessing.
Each one is a stall. There's 8 doors on it, I do believe.
Yeah. So, in that aspect of it. So
The one in front of it,
Yeah.
is the one that they use for the equipment. Is that not correct?
The rear building,
Yeah.
I mean the frontage
No, the white building, this one. They use it for the
Oh,
equipment.
so-
It's one of the ones they rent out.
at the rear of
Is
the
that
site.
not correct? The one they use is the one at the very front, near Lejimojaya.
yeah.
They use the front portion.
Yep.
Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Have you visited the site?
No, Trevor has. I
I
haven't.
know, Trevor has.
Yeah, but I have a couple more questions if I may.
You may.
Okay. And you have not been to the site, correct?
I have stated that, yes.
As you had said. The photographs that you've included are my photographs that I had forwarded to
That is 100% completely true.
during discussions with regard to negotiations.
Yes, that is true. Yep.
And now they're in your brief. as evidence.
That is correct.
Did I submit them to you for inclusion
Oh.
in defending the city's position?
When we share information, we share information. It's about getting the assessed values correct.
It is always about getting the assessed values correct, but it's clear, I don't want to get into it in great detail here, but when we're in negotiations with regard to value, it's all without prejudice. I'll move beyond that. My questions with regard to the land sale comparables on page number 13. So I look at these sales. Before we look at where they're located, the size of them, we're looking at 27%, 43%, 5%, and 13% of the size of the subject additional land area, correct?
That is correct.
That's going to drive significantly higher price per square foot or per acre, correct? All on its own, as a function of size, by appraisal and assessment theory?
Well, yeah. Well, the lower the area, the higher the price usually, correct? But once again, I'm not
So
using
looking at
values here. I'm using
the locations of the comparables. So I'm looking at number 1 here on 1 and 2, I guess, on page 14. One of these is fronting on Marion west of Lajimoje. One is fronting on Marion just to the east of Archibald. So they would have full services at the lot line, significant exposure on the street, correct?
all my comparables are much superior than what we have, but subsequently the rent is significantly lower, or the land sale per square foot that we used.
Those are all my questions, thank you.
Questions, Richard?
Would you go on, please, and I'll come back to me. I'm just doing a calculation.
Sure. Tracy?
I'm still not seeing the 5 sheds, unless that's somehow been divided in, or I'm not sure.
1,
Yes,
2,
yes.
3,
Yeah.
4.
This belongs to somebody
This is-
else. 901.
901 is a separate property, that's why it doesn't fall into that one, to this one.
Yeah.
But there's another one, there's 4, isn't it? How many sheds do you have on there? 1,
Where are we looking?
2, how many sheds do you have on the property?
Well, there's
The big long one?
There's the 3 buildings.
1, 2, 3, yeah, 3 buildings. 1, 2, and 3.
It says 4 premises, but I can see where this may be a fourth.
But the premises are the different aspects of the building?
Yeah,
Yeah, I understand.
which is the back part of this building
Okay.
versus this building.
Okay. And is it possible that all of those boats that are parked there are also creating some sort of parking income?
Well, and that was interesting because in my analysis, what I did is I want to see if there was any relationship between 825 Lajimoje, which is Enns Brothers, and 911 Lajimoje. And so what happens is Enns Brothers is a corporation, and 911 is a single individual property owner. So there was no relation. And so that's why when I looked at the parking income and the rent for the valuation of it, because all these boats they're storing, there's value there. How do you quantify that value? So in our analysis, we did that. So we had used the 6-to-1 building ratio for all the storage and everything like that, because they need to keep the material there. So usually we go 4-to-1, so we went 6-to-1 here. So there was some value in the land, and that's how we came up with it.
You haven't visited, so you already told me that. Do you know the tenants for this building?
No, there's nothing been reported on the income and expense mailer, so.
Well, they use it as storage, but if you look at the sheet you supplied, and you said that they showed 54,000 for parking. That parking was for storage and parking, was it not? You can see the little arrow there?
It's a storage and parking, yes.
Yeah, so it includes the storage area for that building and also the parking. What do you think they're parking on this lot, other than the trailers that you see?
Well, it looks like a whole bunch of cars there.
Right. What else is on, well, you got a picture of some of the equipment that's parked there,
Well, it almost looks like semi-trailers.
and
Yeah.
there's also your tractors.
Graders.
Yeah.
But it all falls into the total package of the rent they're using. They're using only the front portion for themselves, is that not correct?
Yep.
You've created a rent on the other two buildings.
We have.
And if you take your rent that you created, when I find it again. You've already created, basically you've put a total income of $113,000 on this property already.
For the entire,
On the entire property.
For the entire property, yes.
Yeah, you put $113,000.
Yeah.
You put the rents in for the buildings already.
Yeah.
Some of those buildings are what are part of that storage that you're talking about for the rent income, correct?
Well, the point is that we're only, but because it's partially owner occupied, so what we're looking at here is we're just trying to come up with what makes sense. And so they put storage and parking there, but because of the breakdown's not very clear, and there's no consistency in it. So, what they're showing at the bottom of page 10 contradicts what they're putting on the top of page 10 on our income expense memo.
What's the size of the building at the front?
The size of the building at the front, if we do the math there, so we got 4,000 for building 2, and we got 8,200 for the low square feet. So if we're doing the breakdown here, we've got approximately 12,000 square feet.
Okay, so that 12,000 square feet is what's allocated to them.
Yeah, so
The
we're
rest
looking
is
at it here.
allocated
So we have
storage.
10,000 square feet. For 10,500 is the footprint, and the 1,750 is the mess space, or the second floor space.
So you got a total of 12,000.
Yep.
So 12,000 off of 25, so you still got another 12,500. So half of that, right?
Yep.
That's
And
about
I
60,000.
state that
So
way.
it's basically what they stated was their income, is that exactly that figure that you're showing. When I look at your sheet, and their sheet, they're showing they had $54,000 of income on this property. They don't have to show what they're paying rent on it. They don't show that.
Mailer?
Yeah, the mailer. Is it getting closer? There it is. So they're showing 54,000, which is less. I'm not following why you're not going. What? Your rents are including that income when you take what they've
I
got,
understand what you're saying.
what they're using. Yeah, no leases and vacant land. Vacant land, you don't keep that. What's wrong with your presentation, Trevor?
I'd like to ask some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Finish
forgot,
that
I forgot to read.
calculation.
We did,
You've introduced some new ones. So, let me ask, let me confirm. Vacant land is at the end of the property, what I would call the east end of the property.
That's correct.
Okay. That storage shed is 4,000 square feet, and that is rented out, as we saw in your numbers, for $22,560.
Yes.
And I know it's 4,000 because one of the photographs. that
Yep,
Mr. Smith
well, that's what the
provided
breakdown
says
is.
4,000.
Yep.
And then that long shed
Yeah.
is 8 garage stalls, 8,820 square feet.
Yeah.
It is rented out for $29,371 according to your numbers. And I'm
Well-
assuming these are all model-driven numbers,
Everything on here, everything on page 11 is model driven.
except for the actual leasable area.
Yes.
Yes, because it comes right out of the photos.
Yeah.
So the 10,500 and the 1,750, as you suggested, are in the front two buildings, which is a retail mattress selling, bedding selling, and a lumber warehouse retail center.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand that 113,000 in revenue. They've indicated on their mailer that 19,252 comes from the vacant land, which is boat rentals from ends my bet. Do you know that? It's boat rentals or storage rentals from
I-
Enns Brothers next door.
I'm as good as the information that I shared with you today.
Okay. Well,
So
one has to.
I have no additional information on that, you know.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of boats. They come from Enns Brothers. Which is
That
next
would
door.
be, that's what I would
One could
speculate.
surmise
yes.
that.
Yeah.
The sheds, 5 sheds, I think is that long building.
Yeah.
But I can't make it come to 54,000 that you've brought it to, or that they've brought it to, 54,852. I can bring it to 45,852. So my thinking is there's an addition error here somewhere, given it's 852 on both numbers.
Yeah.
You see that? 19,252 and 26,600 is 45,852.
Yeah.
So somehow they're about $9,000 out, and I don't see a $9,000 bill in there anywhere.
Nothing says that the number's right that he's using them.
So, now.
On the
let's-
model or on the income expense
model.
biller?
On the
Well, looking at space here and the quality of the space that we have here, I don't think our rents are unreasonable.
I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
Well, no, one could see you taking that position, I guess, when I look at your numbers. But let's move on to something else that's really bothering me here. You've come up with 54,000 square feet of surplus land. How did you arrive at that number,
Well,
Mr. Assessor?
147, 185. So what we did is, not including the mess space here, and I will read verbatim. So what we did is, if we take the 1750 out,
What are you reading from?
our notes from the previous assessor who
Okay.
changed it.
We don't have that.
No, you don't have that. We calculated it, we used the 6-to-1 ratio on the plan area, but we didn't include the gross area. So if we're looking at this per se,
Where did 6 to 1 come from, if you don't mind asking?
it's just, we wanted to give some, so for industrial properties, we use 4-to-1 as a
Yes.
general ratio per se, right? Like the car dealerships, we use 8-to-1.
Yep.
So what
my
happens
thinking
is,
was 100,000 square feet, not 150.
well, what he did though is that, and so if I'll show you, so if we do 25,000, 25,070 minus the 1750 equals 23,320 times 6. So if we go 23,320 times 6 equals 139,920 minus the 287,105 equals 147,185.
147,000 square feet.
Yep, that's how we did
Not-
it.
Oh, not 54,000 square feet.
I don't know where you
Oh,
got the
sorry.
54,000 square feet.
No, that's
So you're thinking
54,000. Yeah.
So
that's
what-
how you came.
That's how we came with it, because, it is there, and there's the storage area when we're looking at it, So all that space that is by the sheds and by the 2 buildings on the back side, that's all part of the building here. So we took essentially a sliver of that back portion, which is being rented out for the boats, as to be the surplus land.
Mistake in my assumption, I thought 4 to 1 would be the right number.
Well, we
Which
used 6 to
then
1.
makes
We did
sense.
6 to 1 because we made adjustments for the nature of the building.
I hear it, okay. I think I've asked enough questions, I got it.
Mr. Smith, on with your presentation.
Okay. I'm just going to use
Here's your
this as
picture.
my prop for the moment. And it's the easiest for us all to see. So a lot has been said about parking revenue, storage revenue on site. Indeed, there is storage revenue. We can all see the product that is stored there and accounted for in their income and expense by the adjacent landowner. What's being missed in all of this is that can disappear at any time. That's not an ongoing revenue source that they will have until there's no building associated with it. Nobody's renting anything. They can go and buy a parcel of land, rent another parcel of land cheaper, park it outside of the city, whatever they may choose to do that benefits their business model, they can go and do that at any point, and that income dries up and is gone. So what are you left with then? You're left with the same size site. Yes, there's land beyond what one would typically have in terms of a land to plan area ratio at 12.31 to 1. I would be in agreement with that. So what is the value of that land is largely what we come down to. I'll run through the other portions just so that we're clear on them with regard to the quality of the property, etc., and the detail on it. But that, by and large, is where our significant difference is. So let's look at my page number 3. We have a leasable area of 25,070 square feet overall. There's a bit of a breakdown on that. Obviously, there's 3 buildings. Looking at page number 4, there is the main building, which is owner-occupied, is the one that's on the frontage, and that is Huron Lumber. To be clear, there is no hit stack bedding company. The sign is there. I always thought it was there. When you go in, it's demised from the other side of the building, owned by the same people, was intended to be a business that they would operate, but has never really been operated. If you look at the photos, which I'll show you, it's just storage, and vintage storage at that. So let's get into the building. Huron Lumber, cement floor, very worn. You can see the metal panel interior, open to the steel deck. Again, this is looking down the back. The mezz space, which value has been assigned to, is up above here. It's essentially storage. We'll get into visual of that in a minute. This is another picture of the front area of the main Huron area. They have a single office that looks like this, that they put flooring in and some drywall, I guess. My assistant didn't include all of the photos that I want, but I believe they're in the city's brief, so perhaps I'll refer to that. The hip-sack bedding section, which is not an operating company, is shown on page number 4. This is 2 different photos of it. There's nothing there. They built some display cases. It has random kind of tchotchkes on it. There's no operating business, and nor has there been for some time. If you look at the build-out, it's kind of vintage 70s wood paneling, ceiling, etc. There's nothing. There's really nothing there. Yes, there's clothing there. No, it's not. You can't walk in there and buy product. There is no business. Rear of the building is largely unheated. You have low ceilings, very, very, very unfinished. Certainly not to a typical standard of any investment warehouse. Page 6 gives you 2 different views of the mezz space. Up here, this is storage, that office is storage. It's not used as an office. I wish we had better photos up above there to show you. Actually, we do. The top of page number 8. This is the storage mezzanine. So you wouldn't want to be a lot taller than myself or the assessor are, or you'd be running into the ceiling beams in traveling to the office area there. So that's what we're looking at. The building in the middle, excellent photo of the exterior here with regard to the bays, and the interior, very low ceiling heights. Intermittent tenancies, they come and go. They have as they state, roughly 20% vacancy for that over time. They didn't really have leases as such that they could provide. They're rented out on an interim basis on a gross figure, and that's really it. So there's no reliable rent to put in place for those spaces. So you have to look at what will they rent for on the marketplace. Do I have anything in addition to that? There's a couple of photos of the rear building, exterior, interior, obviously heavy industrial use as shown. And then you have photos of the yard space as well. So let's move directly on to the valuation of the property. And I have approached the valuation in looking at what is the long-term, obviously, market value of this property. There's an unreliable source of income with regard to storage. There is income there, so we've accommodated for that somewhat in the rental rates that are applied and the lack of the vacancy rate that's being applied to the income source, as we have a partially owner-occupied site. As it states, they have roughly 20% vacancy. We have not accounted for that. Looking at 14 and 15, we give you some background with regard to rental rates. We give you rental rates on a nearby multi-tenant industrial property in that same vicinity with relatively low rental rates in and around that $5 rental rate range, as you can see at the top of page 15. We've applied $5 a square foot to the majority of the site, $5.25 to the back, and a nominal $3 a square foot to that mezzanine space, simply because it is there. It's marginal at best. It really doesn't add value to it, but we've accounted for it in our valuation. So our projection of rental rate, again, we're accommodating any additional revenue that they currently receive as storage income. Looking beyond this, let's go directly to my page number 18, which compares the city's valuation to ours. We have assigned a higher rental rate, as it turns out, than the city. We did not account for vacancy in the income projection. We have partially owner-occupied, but really what I'm doing is accommodating any additional revenue that they get from the back there. I believe we're probably overstating the net income somewhat in arriving at our $114,251. We capped this at 7%, which is clearly in line with market and in reflection of the condition and quality and location of the subject property. And then we have the issue of land value. So let's address that. If we look at, again, that site aerial, if you look at, we're looking at what, 147,000 or 200 where's the number? 287,000, so a little under 50%. So let's look at the site plan. It's going to be at the rear of the site. So where is your exposure there? There is none. It's adjacent to the railway at the rear of the site, so your access, there's no side street to get access to this on. The only access to this site is through the frontage of the site itself. So there's no possibility of splitting this off. You can't sell it for another purpose. It's all on a single title. It's all on a single roll number. So there is no potential to split this off, subdivide it, and sell it. So there's that aspect is not present. Services. Where's the water and sewer, etc.? It's at the front of the site. There's not there's not toilets, etc. in those rear buildings. Water is not run to the back. You need to stretch servicing to the back. Look at the layout of it. Again, you're looking at rearage here, no access, no visibility. So is there value there? There's a value to everything, obviously, for the most part. Is it going to be marginal? Yes, it is. It's difficult to find land sales that would be particularly useful in coming up with a value for this. If we look at the city's ones, obviously they're better located, ranging from 5 to, what did I say, 5 to 47% or something like that in terms of size. 5 to 43%, going to drive significantly higher values. This is not this is a land that you would put a nominal value on, as the city does. In some circumstances, they have, I forget what the terminology is, there's a land rate that they have for parcels such as this that they apply, and I believe it's probably in the range of what we have applied to the subject at $1 per square foot. So we have added to our income value $148,000 for additional land value, which gives us our $1,780,000. Now, looking at that overall value, I'm comfortable with that. Looking at the net income on its own, we are probably overstating what this property is capable of in its current condition. If you look at the I&E, as we all have in detail, they don't generate what we're projecting for it, but in terms of arriving at a fair market value, I think we're certainly at the upper end of where I would place the property. And that is my presentation, and I'm open to questions.
Mayor, questions?
So you're confirming that half the building is owner occupied? That it's...
The entire front building is owner occupied.
So that's 50%? So would that mean that you're...
And they may have, I believe they have some use of that middle building as well.
Okay. So the full potential of the potential rent's not being fully captured in your income statement, if they're over 60% of the building would be owner occupied then. So what's been presented here is only 40% of the income, not 60%.
Well, there's no income off of an owner. So
Yeah.
they're presenting what.
So then you need to establish what a fair market rent would be.
Correct, which is what we've both done.
And so what you're saying then also is that, so with regards to the surplus land in the back, you don't know how much money they're exactly getting for the boat rentals, for those aspects?
I think it states it in the I&E there. Let's just flip to it.
So that's...
Well, it looks like storage and parking is generating in the neighborhood of $54,000 or $55,000 in that particular year.
Okay. And you had mentioned that when you're looking at the valuation of the property, there's no guarantees that moving forward that storage income will be not there, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So if they expanded it and decided to build a building on that, would that not add value to this property as well? Because there is huge potential for development here if they decided to expand their business.
The Boardroom lumber business?
Well, I'm just saying in general for any type of business, because there's lots of land there to be developed potentially.
Well, so let's look at that then in terms of development potential. So look at the site layout, the current build out, the very limited, narrow access to it.
I'm not saying for another business. I'm not saying for another businesses, because the valuation, the land value that we've looked here, and I've clearly stated.
So I'm still answering your question.
Okay.
There is very limited development potential at the rear of this of this site. I would heavily disagree with what your statement was.
So that the owners would not be able to use that or develop that if there was a business opportunity for them to develop that back portion of their land, that would not, they would not have that at their usage?
Well, obviously they own the land and it is there, but as I've stated, the development potential of it is very limited.
No other questions? Actually, there's actually one other question I do have. Your cap rate study on page 18, number 5. Do you know what the net income was used for your cap rate study on 2081 Logan Avenue?
Not offhand, I don't have it here in front of me today.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't know what the net operating income is?
I do, but I do not have it here in front of me today.
So would I be wrong to state that it would be 125,366?
I could not begin to guess where your figure is coming from.
Okay. Well, it's coming from the income and expense mailer received from the property owner.
As I've stated, we have confidentiality issues with regard to the release of some information, and it is presented in the manner that it is. So what you are presenting is not what I'm presenting.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions?
Go with you first, Tracy.
No questions, sorry.
Back to you, Richard.
I have one or two, just because it goes to the type of business that's being operated and the revenue being generated.
Yeah.
Would you be surprised to learn that in October 3 years ago, I walked into this premise. I was able to purchase a mattress in a box spring and bedding, and go across to the lumber store, I guess you would call it, through an opening in the wall, and purchase lumber products?
I would be somewhat surprised, yes. So as you can see, I've been there, I've been through that opening, etc. And hit the sack bedding is not there. The hit the sack bedding is not there and active. It may have been active 3 or whenever you were on site.
3 years,
obviously.
And 7 years before that.
But it has been abandoned. And I have to be careful in what I say with regard to clients' businesses, etc. But this is not, it's not like an active lumber, a really active lumber yard or anything of that nature. And you've been in it, obviously. It's not that there's no product there. It's just not run as, say, I'm trying to think of a normal. Pick a normal lumber yard, and if you walk in, you won't see the same level of activity nor product in the subject property.
Okay, I hear you. Thank you.
Any question?
No.
Now, you said you took into account the rental income for the trailers in your rent evaluation that you put on it, at $490?
I think it would be fair to say that we're probably overstating the revenue that they would get from those buildings. So it's my estimation that you could fairly accommodate that in what we would project there.
So if you did that, why would you put additional value? Was there additional value added last year and the year before?
I do not know if they have added additional value. So it is, it's not as though the land is not present there. It is present.
Yeah.
They have a very relatively large site, but the land to plan area ratio is on the high side, so they do have some additional land. Now, the value of that land is what's in question.
But if they're renting it out,
layout,
if they're renting it out and getting revenue, do you still put a value on that land when they're renting it out and making their income on that land?
as far as, well,
Because they're using it as income,
that is a point.
correct?
In that the property is fully utilized as it is. If you look at it in that way, I did not consider that aspect, I have to say, in the valuation. So I simply treated it as land that would have a nominal value. There's certainly not 500,000 plus additional dollars in value to the property. But I certainly see what you're saying. They fully utilize the site in getting the storage income that they currently get. So, I mean, it's a challenge, right? How do you do this? Do I look at that middle building and apply $2.50 a square foot and a 20% vacancy, and look at their substandard building on the frontage and call it $3.50 a square foot with 5% vacancy for? It's one of those situations where arriving at the final figure is ultimately more important, I guess, which is kind of how I viewed it in arriving at my number. If that makes sense.
It would be a fun one to
More art
try and
than
put a number.
science. More art than science.
This is more art.
That is the truth.
I mean, there's things I'd love to see, but we can't.
Okay.
I'm good. Let's put this one away for now. The next property is going to be 359 Johnson. When you are ready, Mayor, I do believe there's a real
Here, my finger for a sec.
boy, it'd sure be nice to get coffee in here.
What's the chocolate?
I'm just looking for.
Is it Johnson?
Yep, 359 Johnson,
Got it.
isn't it?
Yep, you're good. It's just.
We did Leslie one there.
I'll start off and then I'll eventually.
You got a different sheet?
File number 1956, roll number is 14082894-200. Address is 359 Johnson Avenue West. And assessed value that we have for this property is $1,482,000. 10 different premises located here, built in 1980. We have a wall height of 8 feet. We have a land area of 33,383, and we have a leasable area of 15,635. The land to building ratio is only 2.4. But when you look at this property, it is located at the corner near Johnson and Watt and Levi Street, and it's essentially a strip mall. That's what it looks like. There's a variety of different tenants in there. And you can see the frontage is located on page 2. And you can see the overhead shot that I have on page 3. So it's in East Kildonan. Johnson runs off Henderson Highway. And Henderson Highway runs north-south. Watt runs north-south, and that's where it's located on the top of page 3. As you can see the overhead on the bottom of page 3, all the different tenants there and all the different separate doorways. What we do have here is on page 4, I have a July 2019 listing here, showing you what the property looks like and what it is, 1,200 square feet, what it's zoned as, you know, what the lease area is and what the count costs are. Page 5 just shows some additional pictures. This is from the applicant's brief in 2018. On page 5, page 6 shows the same, some additional pictures. Page 7, you can see it's standard, you know, office space is not industrial, which is why it's classified as being a flex warehouse standard. So you got some pictures on page 7, page 8, and top of page 9 shows that the actual unit, which is actually vacated at the time. So what we have here, property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out income expense mailers. What we have here right now is just showing the highlights of the income expense mailers that they have.
Which page is that on?
Page 10. Page 11 shows the leasable areas, so we have 1,800 square feet, 1,800 square feet, 1,440, 1,440, so they're essentially small business spaces. Here, we're showing rents of $6 mostly. On page 12, we have more $6, $6.75, $5.25, $6. And then on the bottom of page 12, what we're showing is $9.15. So as I get my glasses here, on the mailer, what they're showing on the bottom of page 12 is that the average commercial rent for what they're reporting is $6.48 here for the property. At the end of 2017, there was no space vacated here. Page 13. So what we have here is there was a sale for this property in 2018 for $1,200,000. Sale seems to be good and bona fide. I do have all the income and expense mailers from 2017, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, and 11. So when I was doing my analysis on the 2013 sale of this property, so what I did is I collected all the income and expense mailers that are listed here. I was trying to figure out what would be the cap rate used for this property. So on the mailers, what happened from 2013, 2012, and 2011, the average net income that I had was around $56,000. There was a dip in different years. But what I did is I came up with a net income of $59,000. And this could be, it's all shown here. So if I took $59,000, and if I did that, divided that by the sale price, it comes with a cap rate of 4.9%. And I can provide this and I can read verbatim up here. And I do have a summary here, but I can't seem to find it. So, page 13 shows all the leases in place here. Like I've stated before, I don't believe land to building ratio is important here because it is a strip mall, and almost all the square footages are under 5,000 square feet, so there's not a lot of room for inventory. So if the argument made that the wall height's low, it's low because it's not really a warehouse. What we have here is on page 14, I have our workup. I have a workup showing that the total potential rent is $102,333 divided by 15,635 comes up with a blended rate of $6.54. Using vacancy loss of 2.5%, expenses of 2%, a cap rate of 6.5%, we come up with a value of $1,482,000. What I've done with my comparable leases is I've taken similar properties that are in the neighborhood. So I'm not taking comparables, I'm not cherry picking low properties in different parts of the city of Winnipeg. I'm taking a flex warehouse standard, and I have two of them that are in East Kelowna. One of them's on Keenley side, and one of them's on Gillespie. And so I'm showing rents here that are from $575 to $745. So if we look at all my average rents here that I've used for the ones that are comparable, that are in the neighborhood, bear in mind these wall heights are higher. It works out to $6.79 a square foot. What I have on page 16 is I have where the location is of the strip mall on the Keenley side.
What did you blank out on page 15?
Page 15, the tenants. The tenants.
Oh, your tenants, and that's for, it's for the
Privacy.
The privacy issue, right? You brought that up before. Go ahead.
Okay. So what ends up happening here is I'm just showing where my comparables are. Keenley side's in East Kelowna and Elmwood. Gillespie's in East Kelowna, not very far from the subject property. So the rents that we're using right now is very comparable. So they're reporting average rents of 649, and we have 654. We've discussed cap rates, and that concludes my formal presentation.
Questions, Mr. Smith?
So the cap rate of 6.5%, I'm looking at the page 17 here with your chart of City of Winnipeg chart. Where does that one fall in?
Well, I would say it would be multi-tenanted, and they're probably multi-tenanted B.
So we're looking at towards the low end of the cap rate scale for multi-tenant B. All right.
Well, yeah, we're within the 20 to 80 percentile. You know, the cap rate supported by the sale price for the net income for the subject property.
So when I look at the income and expense as submitted in your brief and in mine, and I run through the rent that they're generating, comes to about $91,940, correct? It's about $11,000, 10.5 under what's projected for the property. Is that correct?
Yep.
Would an investor receive that if they bought it at the valuation table?
Would the investor receive that? Well, there are some older leases here in 2012 and whatnot, and we're trying to look at market conditions. There's also...
Okay. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Richard, any questions?
No, thank you.
Tracy?
No questions.
I've got no questions. On with your presentation, Mr. Smith.
So let's deal with the elephant in the room to start with. Purchase price, $1.2 million in 2014, as it's shown in the city's brief here, and I believe in mine, it's meant to be included. November 18th, 2014, purchase for $1.2 million. So I've represented this client for a little while. If you look at if you look at the cover page of the city's brief, you can see the ownership name, Bow Lock Inc. This is a small restaurant owner that has done fairly well in his restaurant business, single restaurant, and has generated some revenue or some capital to invest in real estate. He bought a retail strip mall on Provencher that has a Subway on one end cap and a tattoo parlor on the other end cap, with some very marginal space in between, with net rental rates between $6 and $8 per square foot. He also paid a lot of money for that one. He does not. Is it an arm's length transaction? Absolutely, it's an arm's length transaction. Both of these are. He does not meet the requirements of being fully informed and astute investor. Properties were not exposed to the marketplace, etc. He simply wanted to acquire real estate, went out and did so, and he has essentially overpaid for two properties. I believe that if you look at the information included, this will bear this out. Certainly, there's no question with regard to the Provencher property. We've lowered the value in both of the past assessment cycles fairly significantly, and indeed the city was acknowledged that the rent levels there were not that had been applied by the city were well above what were generated and would be generated on the property. So let's look at the subject property. Again, my contention, and this is from speaking with him directly, is that he is significantly overpaid for this. This is not, I'll also state, English is not the first language of this particular owner, so that also adds a level of difficulty in any acquisition by themselves. So let's look at the subject. 359 Johnson Avenue. Yes, it's a strip building of some sort. It is obviously zoned as manufacturing, M1 light manufacturing, has low land to plan area ratio and a low wall height, so that does limit what it can be used for. However, they're relatively small bays, and as you can see, the tenants that are going in there are not your typical warehouse type tenants, so we do acknowledge that. Photos of the property begin on page 2. Exteriors, you have the exterior of the Thirsty Duck Cafe restaurant at the end. Every time I've been there to, which is 3 times, to take a photo of the interior, it has been closed. You can see the photos of some of the other spaces. There was one tenant that is, I believe, the pharmacy there that had some improvements done. The remainder of the space is not as nice as that, as you can see from some of the photos of the interior there. We try and present, obviously, a picture of the whole property, not just the best parts, not just the worst parts, but give you an impression of the property as a whole. Location, we're looking at East Elmwood here in terms of a location. This is not just off of Nairn. In a modern flex warehouse with better access, better ceiling heights, etc. This is, as shown, at the corner of Mr. Lorondo is going to scold me for my lack of French here, but Levi Street and Johnson Avenue West in East Elmwood. Not a high-end location, not going to drive a lot of rent. So let's move on. Sale is recognized on the page following that at $1.2 million. I've already spoken to that. The rents in place are shown on my page number 13, and they come to $91,940 with a $625 per square foot average. I think that's not shown correctly in my summation on the final page for some reason, but in any case, it is $625 per square foot is what it comes out to in the end. The higher rent is representative of the Thirsty Duck tenancy on the end. That's your in-place rental rates. If you look at the terms, start dates and terms of the leases, yeah, some of them have been there for a little while, but generally they've either renewed or they've had a step in their lease over time. So they're continuing for the most part through, you see one that renews in 2018 for 1,800 square feet. Beyond that, they by and large go through 2020, 21, 2022. Thirsty Duck was due for renewal in 2018 as well, and another smaller one at 1,200 square feet, so a 3-year term. In any case, these rental rates are representative of the market. We'll show that. And indeed, it is what you would be acquiring. This is the revenue stream you'd be acquiring. So when the city looks at rental rates and says, well, the market is generating more in some of these other properties, and you should be getting that there. Well, there are leases signed and in place. The revenue stream is what it is going forward, and that is what the purchaser would acquire as of valuation date. So let's look at the lease comps. These are not cherry-picked. These are comparable multi-tenants, small bay warehouse type properties in the city. Generally in at least as comparable as we can find in terms of size, age, ceiling height, etc. All of these have significantly higher ceiling height. As you can see, we tried to include ones that were on the lower end, such as Richard. 165 Eagle is a larger, newer property, 2,045 square feet, $6 rate in 2017, 3-year term. Why the Johnson one is in there, please disregard that. That obviously is the subject. 261 Oak Point, $6 rate for 1,800 square feet, 18-foot ceiling height, 2018 lease. The Richard property is actually an excellent comparable. This is a small bay, low ceiling height location located south of Notre Dame in an kind of a non-typical industrial location, substandard, limited loading, very similar to the subject. We have leases at $6 and $6.25 a square foot in 2018 and 2017 and 2016. You can go through them as you wish. They're all small bay of a similar vintage and are very representative of what you would get for this property. So the in-place rental rates are at market. That's what's being achieved as of the valuation date out on the market too. Let's move on to the summary at this point. I don't know that we need to go through the balance step by step. We've applied the same vacancy rate as the city. Obviously, we include the...
Start with the rent, I thought you said 625.
It is 625.
But
But the math doesn't work out.
Comes out to 97,000, almost 98.
So perhaps it is...
You used the 588.
Okay, so let's go back then with it. The annual rent that is generated, and this is absolutely accurate,
Was 91,000.
is $91,940,
That's what you
leaves
put there.
$938. So that is the figure. It is in both locations.
So it comes
We
out to
can all
5.
do the math. If one of them was input incorrectly, I apologize for that, and it is a typo. The balance of the valuation is shown on page number 17. Obviously, we include the 5% and 2% allowance and the shortfall amount. And I can tell you categorically that the market does not support a 4% cap rate for industrial strip retail in the city of Winnipeg in 2014, or 2020 for that matter. The cap rate that we've applied, we're looking at small light industrial buildings, so you have smaller bays. Generally, there's more tenants for smaller bays such as that. They do tend to be not as good in terms of covenant, and they come and go and sometimes skip on the rent, etc. when they leave. So you do get vacancy obviously in there. Your rents are going to be lower, demand is lower, the area is certainly substandard in comparison to most larger industrial areas in the city. It's not comparable to area just off of Nairn with higher, larger, more modern warehouse facilities. We have used a cap rate of 7% for the subject property. Happy to discuss that if you wish, but it is reflective of what would be paid on the market. And this gives us our value of $1,170,000, and our owner is finally creeping up towards his investment point at 6 years after the fact, 4 years after the fact.
Questions, Mayor?
Yeah, so you're using the actuals in the 91,940, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so you stated that you're not cherry picking rents. Would the Richard property be in a superior or inferior location to the subject property?
It's going to be very comparable, actually. If you look at, and I don't have a map of the city of Winnipeg here, but
I
if
actually
you go
have,
down,
I have it as a rebuttal.
if I can answer the question, if you go down Erin or Wall or whichever it is and head west from there on Richard, that's where That's where this strip center is located. It's a non-typical, not great access property such as this, with similar ceiling heights, age, bay size, loading.
Would it have the same traffic count in terms of visibility on Richard and Clifton and Spruce?
It wouldn't have the same traffic count, you're correct.
Okay. Here, I have this information here with regards to rebuttal. Just to share it with regards to the location, because to me the Richard property is much inferior to the subject property. And the applicant has stated his rents for this property are $6.50 and $6.25. You know what, and I may be splitting hairs here, because the point is it's only 50 cents and it's not significant, and we're not that far off. But it's just, if you look, so the front page has the location of it. It's much inferior to the subject property in terms of location in the West End. Doesn't have nearly the same traffic count. And so the first one that we have here at the 1925 is actually the comparable that Mr. Smith is using at $6.25. Then we got another one here at $6.50. Another one at $6.25, $6. And then on the back page, we got $6.75, $6.50, $6.50. So not significant, but we're not looking at huge margins here. So in terms of that,
So is that the end of that rebuttal?
I'm just sharing information.
Well, no, you're presenting rebuttal, and now I get to ask questions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Have you been in that particular property and seen the spaces and are aware of why the rents are as such for each of those?
I have not been in there. I'm just making an observation with regards to the rents that you're using and what's actually reported on the income expense mailer.
And were they different in any way?
Well, in terms of, we have a wall ceiling height of 12 feet, subject property is 8 feet, so.
My question was, what I reported, was that incorrect?
No, but it was selective.
And my corollary question was, have you been in the units to see why the rent would be?
No, I have not been in the units.
That's my questions.
Richard? Oh, no, you got questions.
Yeah, for sure. So you did an inspection of you had mentioned the restaurant that you inspected?
No, I
That was
have not been able
closed?
to walk through the...
And what time did you do this inspection?
What time?
Yeah.
What time of day was I there?
Yeah.
I was there at various times of day,
Okay.
generally when a restaurant may be open.
So you were there in the evening?
It depends. Was I there in the evening? No, I
Yes.
was not there in
Okay.
the evening. Not
So
all restaurants are have a variety of hours. I made every effort to be through the unit. As I said, I've been on site 3 times. If we're quibbling over the inspection of a single unit in a multi-bay facility.
I'm quibbling about the impression that you're leaving to the board that most takeout restaurants with a huge demand are usually only open in the evenings, not during daytime hours when it would be closed.
Well, that's fine. I was probably at my desk working at that point, I guess.
Okay. No problem. And so you put no value into the sale, correct?
Put no value into the sale. I gave the relevant information behind the acquisition and the knowledge base of the investor, et cetera, and why it was purchased as it was.
Do you know how it was financed?
I did not do the research with regard to their mortgage on the property or anything, and obviously financing is not to be included in any valuation for assessment.
But would that be an important consideration when looking at the valuation of it? Did he pay for it cash or?
It is something that we certainly look at on an appraisal basis, and as you know, in looking at these properties on the assessment basis, financing considerations are eliminated unless they provide some kind of beneficial financing, and in which case the sale can be discounted.
No other questions? Richard?
I didn't hear you characterize the condition. I know you have photos, but could you give us a poor, average?
Sure. So it varies. I will be the first to admit that. There is the tenant that you can see on the top of page 5, bottom of page 4. Actually, there's 4 photos there.
Do you mind just giving us an overall
Okay,
impression?
sure.
Speed things up a bit.
Yeah, there was one tenant that had some money put into their space by themselves, I believe, in the build-out. The others vary in terms. Some of them would be in substandard condition. Some of them would be marginally better than what one would normally find if they put in flooring of their own or things of that nature. So I would call it average.
So, okay, because I mean, we have a lot of respect for your years of experience, and as you drive up to a building, you look at it, and then you go through some of them, you would go, well, average property.
I would consider it probably average.
Okay, second question. You indicated in your evidence that the owner overpaid for the building. My calculation says it was about $76 a square foot at that time in 2014. What would you say a fair market value would be for a property of this nature?
Well, as of the valuation date, I would suggest that it's worth $4,170,000. If we're going back in time, I would need to look at
Go back in time and just give us your impression of what it might have been worth at that time.
So if you go back in time to 2014, our cap rates are going to adjust marginally. They're going to increase somewhat. Your revenue stream would be, call it 50 cents a square foot lower per unit on there, so your net income is going to be lower. You'd be...
I'm thinking of a square foot value, Mr. Smith.
Oh, on a per square foot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm afraid
40, 60, 80?
I would be, not having looked at it in that manner, I'd be purely throwing a number out there at this point, so
I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tracy?
I have no questions.
I've got just one. $91,940 was the total income, not just potential, but that was the total income, correct?
Correct.
So why are we going for the 2.5 on the vacancy? There is no vacancy. You've reported the full rent. You're using the full rent. You're not doing it on the square footage.
Right.
The 2.5 shouldn't be there, right?
No, it absolutely should be there. In looking at properties for valuation purposes, all properties owner occupied even have to account for a certain amount of vacancy in the valuation. In occupied, you can use zero vacancy and attribute an increase in the cap rate to that. In standard investment properties, multi-tenant, such as this, there's always vacancy to a degree. We're not looking at a single point in time. We're looking at that property in the light of what is the normal vacancy over, say, a 5-year time frame, etc. So it will incur vacancy. Some of these tenants will come and go. There'll be a period of time where they're vacant. 2.5% in terms of the square footage, and I haven't worked this out, but you look at the number of units and the size of them, it amounts to, say, a portion of a year for one unit being vacant, essentially.
And I normally wouldn't ask these questions, but you do say the average is 625.
Yeah.
So if the average is 625, how does it come up to 90?
So that's clearly a typo. Let's do the math so we're all on track.
And it's just pennies, but I mean, we're not really that far apart on our numbers here.
So 91, it's not 625, it is 588. If you do 91, 940, divide 15, 635, we come to 588 square foot. The 625 is a number that should have been adjusted in the chart that was not. And I apologize for that.
Okay, I just wondered if on the evidence that was there.
Actually, I do have one other question, if you don't mind. And it's just, you stated in your brief that you have this at the municipal board in 2018. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you have any confirmation of that? Like you have the application or anything like that?
Did I bring that with me today?
Yeah.
I'm afraid that I did not bring the application to the municipal board with me
Do
today.
you know what the value was in 2018?
I think we can all see it on page number 1 there, and that particular board did not see past the purchase price.
Actually, I have just one other additional piece of information. So what I did is I did my due diligence to see if Mr. Smith had appealed it at the municipal board or not. And here's my communication that I had on the top of page 2. I just showing the due diligence that I took to see if it was on the municipal board appeal or not. So this is what I said. I hope all is well in the world. As you can imagine, we're busy over here. I have this property below an appeal for the 2020 board cycle. According to the agent's brief, he has appealed it for 2019. Do you have anything on file? Because I could not find anything in our system. And, so I said, good afternoon, Merrick. The middle portion, appeals are pouring in as usual, keeping busy. I looked at the property, but you could not find anything in our system for 2018. You have to ask the agent for proof of the appeal. So I'm just clarifying it, and at the bottom of it, this is our internal management system, showing that there is no municipal board appeal on page 3. And then subsequently, if you look at the very back here for 359 Johnson, what happens if this was appealed in 2018? You would have saw a municipal board appeal. And then there's 2020, so there's no record on file stating that it's on appeal for 2018. So we just want to clarify that.
Okay. So, to my knowledge, the subject property filing was done to the municipal board. This is a matter that could very easily have been cleared up ahead of the board revision, so that we didn't waste the panel's time, but here we are looking at it. I typically do not have any need to bring forward my applications to the municipal board to prove to the board of revision that they have been filed. I cannot explain this. To my knowledge, it has been filed. I see no dates on this. It's an interesting new wrinkle that I have not seen to date, so I'm not sure what further relevance or information that provides to us. The appeal or the 2018 value was confirmed at $1,221,000. We disagreed to it, and to my knowledge, it was appealed to the municipal board. Certainly, it did not reflect the value at the time.
I just wanted to clarify information here because...
Good. I think we're all done with this one. Everybody's asked their questions. We're going to take a short break. Just chugging along.
Actually, we've done all the serious work, hopefully.
Oh, have we?
I think so.
All the serious work?
I think so. I told Trevor I wanted to be home for the second period.
Ain't gonna happen now.
I think I feel...
Getting her PhD rate. Yeah. She's 30.
So you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Which one are we on now?
We're on
Jarvis?
961.
GT Holdings 961 Jarvis when I put my glasses on. We're on Jarvis. Yes.
I can simplify this one to 5 seconds.
Can
No.
you?
Are you giving me one number that I want?
No,
No?
you were giving me the sale price.
No.
Bob's your uncle.
No. Should I start?
Read it onto the record first.
File number 191510. Roll number is 1400298080. Address is 961 Jarvis Avenue. Roll number value is $1,139,000. Mr. Smith and I had some discussions, and I believe by adjusting the market rent, I'm going to come up with a recommendation of $1,065,000.
$1,065,000. And 65,000. That's almost his number anyway. You only got by 20 grand. You sure don't want to fight for that?
And we can accept that.
You're going to accept that? $1,065,000. We can accept it. That's a good way to do it. All of 50 seconds. Nobody had any questions on that, did they? Just sort of
I'll hold it for the next one.
Okay, hold it for a minute.
You bet.
Perfect. I like that already. Next one is 581 Marjorie. Read it onto the record, please.
File number is 19-1546. Roll number is 0756-9011-800. The assessed value that we had in 2020 was $530,000. Mr. Smith and I had some discussions, and I'm prepared to present the recommendation of $450,000, and I have documentation in front of me here.
Okay. You're okay with that?
I am in agreement with that.
450,000. You just passed the whole file, that was what we needed in our time. You might.
Okay, oh, those are numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got them? Next file will be 249 Oak Point Highway. When you're ready. Yeah. Sure.
File number is 19-1535. Roll number is 140961-81200. Address is 249 Oak Point Highway. We have an assessed value of $700,000. What we have here is we have one-story buildings, two buildings. We have an effective age of 1978. The two buildings were built in 1967 and 1980. It's zoned commercial 3. We have a land area of 42,237, and we have a leasable area of 7,500 square feet. What we have in front of us is that the owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income expense mailer. There was a sale that had taken place in September of 2006 for $447,000. And there's a lease in place for $6.25 using 6,560 square feet. If you could look on page 3, what we have here is it's listed as 251 and 249. Here you can see the two addresses here. So the back portion of the lot is leased. The front portion, which is around, I think, 1,500 square feet or so, that is not leased at this time. Page 3 and 4 shows the pictures of the subject property. Page 5 shows the cap rate study that we've used. And page 6 shows my income workup. We have 1,000 square feet at $660. We got 6,500 square feet at $643 to come up with $6.45. Using a vacancy of 3.5%, a vacancy of 2%, shortfall of $375. Come up with a net operating income of $44,783. Using a 6.4% cap rate, we come up with a value of $700,000. What we have here to support our leases is that I've taken all leases that are in the neighborhood, that are in the northwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg. We're showing leases that range from $5.90 up to $10.68. The buildings most of the buildings are close to the age of the subject property, except for the one at 231 Oak Point. 689. Page 9 shows the location of where it is. High traffic area on Oak Point Highway on Route 90. Page 10 shows the income and expense mailer that's provided here. Showing this income and expense mailer is combined with the property to the north of it. And here's like the general rent roll. Just to show what we have here is on page 14, the 251, which is like the third one down, shows the actual lease in place with $6.25. And that concludes my formal presentation for this property.
Question?
Don't want to get into it in great detail. A couple of the lease comps on page 7 are Sturgeon Tire and Fountain Tire in the high traffic locations, correct?
Yep.
The 231 Oak Point is an auto dealer, correct?
Yes.
When I look at the I&E on 13 and 14, the larger site including 261 Oak Point, we have rents of $5.50, $5.95, $5.25, etc. in that adjacent building, which is part of the overall holding, correct?
Yep.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Richard, questions?
No questions.
Tracy, questions?
No questions.
So how much is the total amount of square footage that they're renting now? Not just with this, but with their total package?
Well, according to our lease information, it's 65,60.
So that's probably why they're getting a break on the rent, is because they're renting such a large amount. It drops it down, because I see none of your comparisons in that 65,000 square foot range.
6,500 square feet.
6,500.
Yeah. Some of the leases are smaller, yes.
Okay.
But that's on the roll,
And it's on the roll.
to the north of it. So if you look at 261,
Yeah.
that's more like the flex warehouse space or whatever.
Yeah.
So what we have here is because the subject property we're dealing with
We're talking like
is a storage warehouse. It's a bit larger, and the other ones are a bit smaller.
But the actual is 6 1/4, you show it on your end.
Yep.
Okay, on with your presentation.
Okay, so for ease of comparison, as it's difficult to find in my brief, if you look at the cities, page 13 and 14, the overall investment asset is $249. Pardon me, 249 and 261 Oak Point Highway. And if you look at, hopefully I've got a good aerial of this. If you look at my page number 6 and the site aerial, the area outlined in red is 249, which is the small building inside, 251, which is at the back, which has a 6 1/4 lease, has a couple of days in there, all rented to a single person or single business. And then 261 is this building on the other side, different roll number. If you look at rent roll, it's all part of the same asset. The rents in that building, and that building is very comparable to the building at the back where they're getting 6 1/4. They are generating 6 1/4, $6, $5.25, $5.50, $5.95 onwards, right? Some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. In any case, that's the rental range that they're getting there. They're getting 6 1/4 on the unit at the back. Immediately beside it, for essentially the same property, they're getting somewhat lower, 650 on one case. I think the 6 1/4 is very representative of what is achievable on the market. If you want to look at the property itself, there are 2 buildings on site. There's the larger one at the back where they're generating the rent, 6 1/4. And then there is the small small stucco building, which is actually unit number 249, which is about 1,000 square feet, which is vacant and has been for some time, which is on the southeast side of the site, bordering on Egez, I suppose that is. Location is shown on page 7, and our lease comparables for the subject property are shown on page 10. So we have a number of them from 261 Oak Point, obviously the rest of them are in the brief. 271 Oak Point, different property, adjacent, I believe, as, oh no, sorry, that's still part of this one. 261, 271 are the same one. Also in that 6, 6 1/4, 5, 550 range. So the little building that's vacant is not of the same quality or size or leasability as the one at the back. However, we have still applied 6 1/4 to that unit in our valuation. We can flip to my page number 13. Vacancy expense allowance still at 5 and 2%. We use the same vacancy as the city at 3.5%. Shortfall is the same, and we have a cap rate of 7% on the subject property. Again, the main market participants are indicating investment grade ranges of 6.5 to 7 1/4. 6 to 7 1/4 for investment grade industrial assets. This would be a marginal investment grade asset, I would consider it. Looking at leasing out truck bays is not a large investment category in the marketplace. They are out there, but it's not a big in-demand one. However, given the size, 7,500 square feet, we felt that 7% is appropriate. That keeps it obviously within the range and is in keeping with our cap rates as shown at the top of page 13 as well. Gives us $587,000.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Questions? Richard? No. No? Let's move on. Conclude that matter. We're going to make the second half of this game.
What did I tell you guys? You guys covered me.
This is what happens when we give you a cup of coffee.
Coffee and
Let's be Gonzalez.
let's move on to 44 Archibald.
So there are 2 issues here, and to expedite the process, are there any issues with regards to non-compliance for this property, Mr. Smith?
No.
So,
Compliance will be granted. Okay. So you go first, Mr. Smith.
oh,
Oh, right. Sorry.
well, unless we're going to come to the value that I had offered.
I don't believe so.
No? You're not comfortable with the value?
Not exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
Go ahead,
This is board.
Mr. Smith, you start.
Oh, right.
Read the roll number on Mr. Smith.
We are dealing with 44 Archibald Street. The roll number is 0605149800. 44 Archibald Street. This property is owned in tandem with 2 adjacent properties, 46 and 50 Archibald Street, owned by the same ownership, and have already been appealed in this cycle. Very similar properties, which we will speak to here. Looking at 44 Archibald Street, it's essentially a truck bay as well. If you look at the photos of the property beginning on page number 4, you can see the interior of it. There's a hoist, some repair, etc. that's done on site there. Total leasable area is 4,819 square feet. Land to plan area ratio is 3.1 to 1, so you would have limited, somewhat limited on-site storage for the subject property. The site is shown on page number 5. The building is located at the back of the site with a graveled area in front. It's not paved or anything of that nature. very basic butler-style building, steel frame, aluminum exterior panels, gas-fired furnace heat, etc. Pretty straightforward, bit of a dirtier use, obviously. And if we look at the location of the subject property on Archibald on page number 6, so as you head north, take the Banché to Archibald, head north, and it is, once you go under the underpass, under the railroad there, it is on the right-hand side, just past where the Restore is located. So you've got older industrial buildings, generally of a lower quality, definitely older, and kind of a mixed use, grittier type of industrial area, I guess is how I would characterize it in relation to more developed, more modern industrial areas in the city. Certainly a secondary location in the city. So, what should be our value on this? Well, what will it rent for? To my knowledge, we did not. Give me a moment here. I did not have any information with regard to a lease on the property. It is a truck bay, so I'm imagining the owner who operates adjacent to this is not occupying it, as they are not a truck repair center. But I do not have any detail with regard to the lease itself. As you can see, the city's IAD was not included or filled out, so we don't have that information either as it stands. Looking at page number 9, then we need to establish a market rent for it. So we're trying to look at similar rents or comparable properties. So we can flip back one property to our 249 Oak Point Highway. In addition to the information I've included here, these are all dominantly multi-tenant industrial, smaller bay warehouse or medium bay warehouse in better locations than the subject property. We have rents in that $6 to 6.25% range. Relatively modern buildings, 1980, 67, 88, 75. You can see the information for yourself. Wall heights of dominantly 16 plus. The subject is 14 to 16. Or sorry, that's incorrect. That top line should have been changed to represent 44 Archibald. 44 Archibald is 18-foot ceiling height. If you look at
44 Archibald is what?
18 foot, I believe.
Okay. We had 16.
I think it's probably on yours.
We have 16.
You're probably right in that instance. I didn't print out the property attributes page and bring it, unfortunately. Again, 249 Oak Point Highway through 271 Oak Point Highway, if we look at truly comparable small bay trucking leases, we're looking in that $5 to $6.25 $6.25 a square foot rental rate range, which matches essentially what I have in my rental comparables on page 9. Those probably should have been included in that material on page 9 as well. Fortunately, we have them here today in evidence on the other property. I think they give you a pretty good indication of what that would go for. We have used a net rent of $6 a square foot. Again, our size for the subject is somewhat larger at 4,819 square feet. So $6 would certainly be appropriate. They wouldn't be getting more than that. If we look at our summary page on page number 12, so we've applied $6 a square foot 2, the space, 5% vacancies, total of 7% expense allowance, including the 5 and 2, and a cap rate of 7.25%. Oh, the city is indeed right. We have a wall height of 16 feet, I see, on my page 12. Single tenant industrial property, less desirable area, heavier use, not great access, not great on-site storage, low ceiling height, low land to building ratio. We've used a cap rate of 7.25% for the subject. I am willing to adjust this to 7% in my analysis. Reason for that being we appealed the 2 neighboring properties owned by the same owner, which are very similar to the subject, both in terms of location, size, build out. They're not truck bays, but they are immediately adjacent to this. They were decided on the basis of my net income as well as a 7% capitalization rate for buildings 46 and 50 Archibald. So using the same 7% cap rate that the board has used on that will give us 352,000.
Rounded.
Rounded. And
Wow, $12,000.
yeah, it's a big adjustment. So I have that information with regard to those 2 adjacent properties right here, and the decisions on them.
They're in the back of our file.
Are they in the back of the file?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, they.
Great. I wasn't sure that they were included. That is my evidence again.
Where are they?
Well, they didn't put it in yours.
Well, maybe I see there. Yeah, I see there. Yeah. Sorry, there was a bit of a break.
They're okay, good. So they are in there? Excellent. So as you can see, they were decided at our NOI, which was based on $6 a square foot, and they applied a 7% cap. That was for unit or number 46. For number 50, we had $6 a square foot, and they used a 7% cap for that as well. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Questions, Mayor?
Yeah. Would the larger properties have lower rents than your comparables 3 and 4? Would they be lower rents because they're more than twice the size of the subject property?
Well, that would be one component of rent. To balance that, they're both significantly better buildings, significantly better visibility and profile for Waverly. Debates is a much more modern building with better loading and ceiling height, etc. So yes, they're larger. I grant you that.
So are you implying that the Archibald property is in a poor location in terms of traffic volumes?
No, I don't believe I actually mentioned traffic volumes at all.
Well, you said that the Debates property is superior in terms of, maybe I misinterpreted this, is the Debates property superior than the Archibald property in terms of visibility?
So let's, again, we're looking at the overall, the whole picture here, not individual components. So Debates is a 1988 building, multi-tenant, medium bay warehouse in St. Boniface Industrial Park. It's well built, well located, good access, ceiling height of 20 feet, excellent loading. It's a superior property in many ways to the subject property.
Okay. So is storage an issue for a car repair shop?
Well, we're not valuing necessarily a car repair shop.
What does it look like? Does it look like a car repair shop?
Currently doing car repair in the property, yes.
So would you not say it's a car repair shop then?
I would, so as I spoke to in my evidence, if you flip back to 249 through 271 Oak Point Highway and look at the car repair shops in those bays, they're generating in the 5 to 6.25 per square foot rental rate for very similar properties, very similar size, build out, etc.
No further questions.
Richard?
I'm fine, thanks.
Tracy? Let's call it a night.
Oh, I got to present.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, but he went.
You're trying to cut me off. You're
I
not
forgot
giving me an
to-
opportunity to speak for
I'm
the
trying
taxpayers
to
of my
cut you off. I'm trying to get you to that hockey game.
Oh, I know.
Go ahead.
File
Present,
number-
then we'll ask you a whole bunch of questions.
File number is 1951. Roll number is 0605149 8000. Address is 44 Archibald Street. One-story building built in 1983. Wall height 16 feet. Zone M3. Leasable area is 4,819. And the land to planned area is 3.08. Property owner has been non-compliant. Looking at the subject property, Mr. Smith has better pictures than I do, but it's obviously a car repair shop. So in that regards, it's a great location on Archibald because it's high traffic. There's bus service out here. So if people want to get their car fixed and be able to go to work, very easy access to it. Page 4 shows some additional pictures there. What we have for income. Property is listed as a storage warehouse. And we have a rental of $7.25 for it, with a potential rent of $34,938, using 5% vacancy, even though the property is 100% owner occupied. Expenses 2%, shortfall $375. We come up with a net operating income of $31,623. Cap rate of 6.05%. Comes up with a market value of $523,000. So what we've done with the subject property is we're just showing leases that are nearby the neighborhood. Keenly side, all nearby, Gabry, other than Logan, all of our other leases are very close nearby. We're showing a range of $7 to $10.80, all within the leasable area. Subject property is 4819. My biggest property is 6,000 square feet, and my lowest one is 2837. Page 9 shows the location of the property. And that concludes my final presentation. Thank you.
For your lease comparables on page 7, are any of these auto or truck repair shops?
Well, there's a marine sport. They're mostly similar to where smaller office retail spaces, like office flex warehouse. It's a storage warehouse.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's like they're smaller in size because we have this parked as a storage warehouse. It looks like a car auto repair shop. It's one of those properties that are outside our normal standard parameters for industrial.
right. So when I look at 21 Keenly side and 12 Chester there, those are both located immediately south of Nairn, west of, where Nairn is. Those are both relatively modern multi-tenant flex warehouses with good loading, small bays, etc., right?
Well, I would consider 1971 and 1973 properties to be modern.
The front, certainly one of them has had the exterior renovated, correct?
Our effective year built is 1971 and 1973.
The tenancies there, again, are not of the nature of a truck repair center, are they? They're more office-y in nature?
Yes, they are, but they're inferior locations as well. They don't have the same traffic volume and visibility as the subject property does.
Okay. I'm not going to ask any more questions, that's fine.
Richard?
This is model-driven, the rent?
Yes, that's correct.
So you didn't adjust it at all?
I didn't adjust it.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
I have no questions.
No questions? Somebody lives 8 minutes from there, the map says. I've got no questions, let's call it a day.
Summary?
You want to summarize?
I was debating it.
It's up to you, if you'd like to, we're prepared to listen. You know,
I think you've heard the evidence. The only thing I'm going to mention, and it's just simply because this bothers me, because I absolutely know the detail on it, is 90 Park Lane is not an investment transaction. There is no cap rate. That's my only comment.
And I completely disagree
And you
with
completely
that.
disagree with it?
Unequivocally. You know, how do you develop a cap rate on recent history of buildings? Just because it's vacated for a short period of time before it.
Income.
You guys want to keep arguing about this one all night long? or?
No income.
You know what?
You agree to disagree?
You know?
Parking lot, deal with it all that.
Just go through, you know, it's, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm really not gonna say anything, because that is just so.
Okay, shut the microphone off over there, and then you can say all you want. Hit that little red switch, will you?
Yeah, of course.
Push it down.